Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk a little bit about building a new-ish PC, at least new to you, using old hardware. Now, in case you don't really keep up with PC news, you should be aware that building a PC right now is just really difficult to do at a decent price point, largely because RAM costs are out of this world right now, costing for 16 gigabytes as much as something like $250 in some cases, kits that used to cost about $150 about a year ago. So RAM costs are one big thing, and the other side of that is the GPU market, which is just outrageous. Right now you can't hardly find a GTX 1050 Ti for less than $200, and other cards like RX 580s are going for $400, $500, even $600, and these used to be considered mid-range cards. So I stand by the recommendation that you really should be waiting for building a PC if at all possible. But if you're somebody that either just really wants to build a PC right now or you can't wait for some reason, then there are some things that you can do to save yourself some money. But first off, realize going in that you are going to be spending a lot more money on your graphics card than you really want to be, and these are just some sort of basic guidelines that you can sort of go by. And by the way, the secondhand market has been affected by the GPU shortage because there are so many people looking towards it to find affordable graphics cards. So the first problem I want to tackle is the RAM prices, and right now an 8 gigabyte stick of DDR4 RAM runs about $90, $100. It depends a little bit depending on when you're getting it, but roughly $100. DDR3, on the other hand, is about half the cost of DDR4 per capacity, so you can get about 16 gigabytes of that for about the $100 price point. And yes, that does put you on an older platform if you go that route, but you can get more RAM at the $100 price point. And if you stick to something like the Haswell lineup of Intel CPUs, then you're still getting really solid performance. And if you're gaming, that's going to be plenty for you for the really foreseeable future, especially if you're sticking with the i7 4 cores, 8 thread processors from the Haswell lineup. So there is more good news on that front. You can get something like an i7 4770 for about $200 secondhand, and you can pair it with a motherboard that's about $50. So between the RAM, the processor, and the motherboard, so you'd be getting a Core i7, 4 cores, 8 threads with a motherboard and 16 gigabytes of RAM, you're looking about $350. Now, if you were gonna go with modern setup, that would be a Core i5 with maybe just 6 physical cores, a motherboard, right now that would be the Z370s, and 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. You're gonna be running a lot more expensive than that. So going with the Haswell lineup with used parts could be a good way to save some money off of your build. Now, on the graphics card side of things, there's a couple different options you could take. One of them is buy a little bit lower end of a GPU than you might otherwise want to. For example, the GTX 1050 Ti, although definitely more expensive than it should be, right now you can still find them new for about $190, which is about $40 more than I would want to be paying for one of those, but it would be a good card to get you by 1080p gaming. You'd be able to play all the modern games that you want. You may have to play with the settings to get them down into the more playable range. Medium settings for some games. If it requires a lot of graphics power, then maybe low, but it'll get you by. If on the other hand you want a graphics card that is gonna give you better performance than the 1050 Ti, you're really stuck with the secondhand market, at least right now, if you're wanting to pay for anything that's even remotely considered reasonable. For example, on the secondhand market, it looks like you can get a GTX 970 for that $250 to $300 range. And those prices, I'm sure, will continue to fluctuate as the new graphics card market fluctuates, but that's just sort of a baseline. If you're looking for a higher end GPU like a 980 Ti, then expect to pay quite a bit more. If on the other hand you're looking for a lesser GPU, maybe like a 960, then you can save some money there on the secondhand market. But I would argue that if you're going below the 970, probably just go ahead and get the 1050 Ti. So if you price out comparable systems, on the new side of things, that would be an i5 8400 paired with a motherboard, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a GTX 1050 Ti, versus on the other side of things, the system that I already mentioned, the i7 4770, $50 motherboard, also 16 gigabytes of RAM, and also a 1050 Ti, then you're actually gonna save about $100 on the older platform. And if you're just gaming, that i7 is still gonna handle modern games just fine, and you're not really gonna notice a big difference switching over to the 8400, especially if you're not pairing it with a monster graphics card that'll really push the CPUs to their limits. But of course, there are a couple trade-offs, such as getting on a dead platform with the older platform, but Intel likes to iterate very quickly on their platforms anyways, so it's not like the Coffee Lake side of things is gonna stay relevant for a really long time. For all we know, they could move to a new platform altogether, and you may have to get a new motherboard anyways if you upgrade that CPU to a 9th generation CPU, so there's no guarantee that that platform doesn't end up dying off relatively quickly anyways. But of course, this is where I kick it back to you. If you have any tips for people that are building PCs in a very hostile market like this right now, let us know those tips down below. And of course, if you have resources, also let us know down below. And of course, if you like this content, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment down below. All those things are very helpful to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.